All right, so it's time for my Academy Award predictions. And so the ceremony is on Sunday, and I'm trying to figure out exactly where my ballot is going because this has been one of the most confusing seasons in recent memory. I mean, you have Guild wins across the board for many of the Best Picture nominees, and this is one of those years where no matter what wins, some precedent is being broken. I mean, Black Panther doesn't have any acting, directing, or editing nominations, but people are still predicting it to possibly win. By the same token, it's incredibly rare to win without a Best Film Editing nomination, and the current frontrunner, Roma, doesn't have those nominations. Also, no foreign language film has ever won Best Picture, and no, film from a streaming service like Netflix has ever won. So it's kind of a crazy race. Then you have Green Book, which missed out on directing, which, it's extremely rare to win without directing. I know, Driving Miss Daisy did it, Argo did it, but those are more the exception rather than the rule. Bohemian Rhapsody, no, it has the Best Film Editing nomination somehow, but it doesn't have Best Director. Its script isn't in there. It's just kind of a crapshoot at the moment of what could possibly win. Now, the ones that have hit in the major categories, stuff like The Favorite and Black Klansman, and Vice, don't seem to have the same amount of broad love and support that smaller films like Roma and, yes, even Green Book have, or that the bigger films like Black Panther have. Although I'm at the point where I'm kind of willing to write off A Star Is Born entirely, just because I think people like the movie, but I don't think there's that huge groundswell of support for it. There's just support for the music, which I think Shallow easily wins Best Original Song, but I guess we'll see in a little bit. My official prediction for Best Picture is Roma. That's the film that I think has the widest base of support going for it. And you see, the thing about the preferential balloting system for the Academy Awards is that passionate support gets you the nomination, but a broader consensus is what gets you the win. So if you can find that kind of consensus, that movie that everybody likes, then you have a Best Picture winner on your hands. Now, this preferential ballot might tend to help movies that are more palatable for audiences like Black Panther or Green Book or even Bohemian Rhapsody, those types of crowd pleaser movies that aren't necessarily challenging, but certainly have their own merits, whatever merits that those may be. But I think the thing about Roma is that the reason it's so well loved is because it's challenging, because it's told in a sort of straightforward cinema verite style. It's this slice of life picture. And sure, maybe it's not as ostentatious as other Best Picture winners, but I think there has been a movement in the Academy of a less is more mentality. Especially with Best Picture winners like Moonlight and Birdman. Now, Birdman was a very, boisterous, ostentatious movie, but there were subtle elements, and it doesn't tell a conventional story, or at least it doesn't tell it in a conventional way. And the same is true of Moonlight. There was a lot of subtlety to that film and how it was brought across. And now, granted, I'm only citing two examples, but I feel like it paints a broader picture of the race as it stands now. So right now, I mean, yes, it's possible for something like Green Book or Black Panther or like even Bohemian Rhapsody to upset. But I think in terms of what is unprecedented happening, I think it's safer to predict Roma. Like, that's the safe pick for me. But if you really wanted to go balls out, by all means, just throw Bohemian Rhapsody out there. And then if you're right, you will be the champion of your office Oscar pool, because you really went in there and got it right when no one was calling for it. But I really think the spoilers here are potentially Green Book and maybe Black Panther. I don't know. I just don't see Bohemian Rhapsody happening with the Bryan Singer drama and the low critical review scores. But then the Academy is trying to appeal to a wider base of people, and Roma is not a movie that appeals to a wide base of people. And it doesn't scream that same amount of relevance, mainstream relevance, that is. That's something that, say, Black Panther or Bohemian Rhapsody or even Green Book would. But at the end of the day, I still have to go with Roma. I'm going with my gut. Hopefully this will end my 6-year streak of getting Best Picture wrong. But, yeah, whatever. Alright, for Best Director, a lot of people would suggest that it's Spike Lee's time to finally win a competitive Oscar for directing. I mean, he has an honorary Oscar already, but I'm predicting him to win Best Original Screenplay for BlacKkKlansman. So my thought is that they'll just give Alfonso Cuarón his second Oscar for Best Director, his first one being for Gravity, because I think it's such a personal and intimate passion project for him, and it's so well directed that I think it's almost kind of hard to deny him. We've had a lot of years in recent Oscar seasons where Best Picture and Best Director don't match up, but that's kind of par for the course for the Oscars, I think. But I think those were kind of outlier years and aren't necessarily going to become the norm. Although I suppose with the preferential balloting system, that could continue to happen. It didn't happen last year, even though I predicted it would, because I fell into the trap of thinking that, well, Best Picture and Best Director are always going to split. That's just how it's going to be. But when you have filmmakers who are as respected as an Iñárritu or Guillermo del Toro or Cuarón, I think it's safer to bet that Best Director and Best Picture will go hand in hand for the most part. So Cuarón it is. For Best Actress, I think there is an outside shot for Olivia Colman to spoil, but I think this really is Glenn Close's time, and I know people don't like that sense of a makeup Oscar, of that Oscar that you're getting to make up for the fact that you haven't gotten one yet. But I really do think it's time to reward Glenn Close, because I think Glenn Close, she deserves it. She has the narrative behind her. Now, by the same token, you can make the argument for Lady Gaga potentially upsetting, but I think she's already going to win in Best Original Song, so I don't see the passion for her performance being as strong here or being strong enough to carry her to the win. I think the big potential spoiler here is Olivia Colman, and that all depends on whether the actors branch of the Academy views her performance as a lead performance, like a co-lead performance, or if they view it as a supporting performance that got bumped up to lead and just kind of call it category fraud. Because you can make the case either way, but I really do think, the favorite was more of an ensemble piece. It was 3 leads rather than 1 lead and 2 supporting, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I think this is Glenn Close's prize to lose, so my official pick is for Glenn Close in The Wife for Best Actress. For Best Actor, Christian Bale is pretty much the only person who can stop Rami Malek from winning, but even then, I don't think it's enough. Yes, it's a great performance in Vice as Dick Cheney, a very memorable figure, but Rami Malek was more memorable, even if you can make the argument again that, hey, well, maybe he didn't get Freddie exactly as he was. But that's not really the point. The Academy loves it when you play a real person, which, to be granted, everybody in this category is, except for Bradley Cooper. But with Rami Malek, I think it's a performance that allowed him to show a lot of light and shade and different elements of Freddie's personality. Whether it actually managed to be factual or not, that's for internet blogs to take issue with. But as far as the performance goes, I think even people who don't really care for the movie like Rami Malek and his performance, so I almost can't imagine him not winning. So I'm going with Rami Malek. For Best Supporting Actress, it's hard because you have to go back to Marcia Gay Harden winning for Pollock to recall a time where someone won Best Supporting Actress without being nominated for a Screen Actors Guild Award. So, like, Regina King is the front runner right now for If Beale Street Could Talk, but she's missing that crucial SAG nomination. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't still happen and that it won't still happen. I mean, Regina King is officially my prediction, but I have this nagging feeling in the back of my head that it's Amy Adams' time, because she's been nominated so many times and just hasn't gotten there. And you can make the case that she's more important to her movie than Regina King is to hers. Regina King's role in If Beale Street Can Talk is a crucial role, but I think Amy Adams' role in Vice is more important to the narrative as it's being told. But, I mean, that's a matter of opinion, I think. So it really goes, do they go with the person who's mainly been the frontrunner all season in Regina King? Or do they surprise by going with somebody whom they've always respected, but just have never gotten around to rewarding yet? And that's the pull. Like, if it's not, it's down to Adams and King, and at the end of the day, I'm going with King, but I would not be surprised if Amy Adams pulled it off here. I mean, I would be surprised if any of the other three pulled it off. Like, I've heard some late rumblings that Rachel Weisz could win her second Oscar here, but I really do think this is a two-person race between King and Adams, and I'm going with King. Now, for supporting actor, this one seems a little bit more wrapped up. I think this is Mahershala Ali's second Oscar, and I don't really know that there can be any upsets except for Richard E. Grant in Can You Ever Forgive Me, because it really is one of the best supporting performances of the year. And maybe if people view it as category fraud for Mahershala Ali to be in this category, since he's technically co-lead, then I could see Grant, like, getting that groundswell of support that carries him across the finish line. By the same token, Sam Elliott is a long-respected character actor, the type of guy and the type of performance that the Academy loves to reward. So why not go for it? Well, the reason is because this is such a stacked year. So I could see it being one of either Ali, Elliott, or Grant. But these are my official predictions, so I'm not trying to hedge my bets. So my official prediction is Mahershala Ali for Green Book, for Best Supporting Actor. And my phone is running out of video time, so I will be back later with the rest of my predictions. Okay, so I'm back with the rest of my Oscar predictions, and I'm going off of my personal ballot, which is a combination of personal preferences, so heart, but also sort of statistical possibilities and what's won at the guilds, which is more of the head playing the game. But also a mixture of the two, because, for instance, while Can You Ever Forgive Me won at the Writers Guild, I don't necessarily believe that it's going to repeat at Oscar, but you never know. Like, there's no way to ever know until the day actually comes. So, here we go. I left off with supporting actor, and now I'm picking up with original screenplay. Between Green Book, Roma, The Favorite, Vice, and First Reformed, common sense would pretty much say either Roma or The Favorite, but I just have this nagging feeling that it's going to be Green Book, even with the controversy surrounding some of the weird comments that Peter Farrelly and Nick Vallelonga have made, or actions on social media. I don't know if that'll really factor into things, but it just seems like the type of screenplay that they would go for, even though The Favorite makes way more sense for this category. I don't know, like, so does Roma, but I feel like if the Academy is going to reward Roma, I think it's going to be one of those movies that they reward, but that they don't go overboard with rewarding. So, and I'm thinking, like, Green Book, Like, yes, it's getting something through Mahershala Ali, but I also feel like it needs to get something else stats-wise. I don't know. It's just a confluence of different possibilities coming together to lead me to this prediction. So I'm going with Green Book for Best Original Screenplay. Now, for Best Adapted Screenplay, I think this is the Academy's chance to finally give Spike Lee a competitive Oscar, because I really don't think he's going to get it in Best Director. Like, that could always happen, 100%. But I don't know that it's necessarily something that the Academy will do when Cuarón is there giving arguably the best directorial work of his career. But I'm going to stick with BlacKkKlansman for this. Even though I don't think it's the best screenplay out of the 5 nominees, I think there is a chance that Can You Ever Forgive Me could upset. Who knows, maybe even A Star Is Born could upset, but I really can't imagine that happening. Well, at least with A Star Is Born. If Beale Street Could Talk is a great film and well written, and also The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, it's hard to ever bet against the Coen brothers entirely, but I don't know. I'm just not feeling it. And I think the narrative is there for Spike Lee, so BlacKkKlansman it is. For Best Cinematography, we could see an upset in the form of Cold War, especially because Pavel Pawlikowski is in for Best Director, which implies more support than a foreign language film normally gets in a given year, much less when there's another major foreign language film in the running. Because it's in here for cinematography, Best Director, and Best Foreign Language Film, and that's huge, especially when it's competing against Roma. But at the end of the day, I think this award goes to Roma. I have to believe that it goes to Roma just because the cinematography is just something else entirely, and I think it's really well put together. And I know I shouldn't be letting my heart get involved, but I think that's a more reasonable heart-based pick than most. Now, costume design, common sense says The Favorite, right? But I don't know. I feel like this is where they reward Black Panther. Because they're not going to let Black Panther leave empty-handed. And yet, by the same token, I can't imagine them leaving The Favorite empty-handed either. So it's tough for me to really pick on what's going to win in these visual aesthetic categories, especially when you're betting against Sandy Powell, who is an absolute legend in this category. But I mean, it's kind of the John Williams effect, or the Thelma Schoonmaker effect. Like, they can't win every year. So I mean, I just have a feeling that it's Black Panther for costume design. So that's going to be my pick. And I understand that there are smarter picks to make than that, but this is just like a hunch, like a gut feeling that I have on my part. And a lot of my Oscar picks are legitimately gut feelings. Ah, someone's parking behind me. Very nice. I hope I'm not confusing them. Best Film Editing. Now, this category, it's always important to have the nomination here because obviously it's very rare to win Best Picture without film editing. That's kind of a nick in the armor of Roma, The fact that it's not here in Best Film Editing is a problem if you're looking at statistical Best Picture winners. But again, this hasn't been a statistical year at all. For instance, I can't think of a time where a Best Picture frontrunner like Roma has gone into Oscar night with only one Guild win. It didn't win the Editors Guild. It wasn't nominated at SAG, It didn't win Producers Guild. It only won the Directors Guild for Alfonso Cuarón, which is a huge deal, but you would think that there would be more Guild wins under its belt if it were going to win Best Picture. Now, I'm still predicting Roma to win Best Picture, but it's just illustrative of how wild this season has been, because no matter what wins, some sort of Oscar statistic is going to be broken. But anyway, film editing, getting the nomination is important if you're going to win Best Picture, but actually winning it doesn't really seem to matter. So that's why I'm going with Vice for this category, because Best editing often means most editing, and Vice is like the most edited movie of the year. Like, it has these weird transitions, and it does all this, like...
From here, the liquid chocolate leaves the large containers in this chamber, where it will be dried once again.
Atypical things that you would expect from an Oscar contender. My number 2 pick would actually probably be Bohemian Rhapsody, weirdly enough. Not because I liked the editing in that film, quite the opposite, in fact. Like, I didn't like the editing in that movie at all, but it's a case of, once again, most editing. And by that same token, The Favorite has an argument for film editing, because it's a very lush, well put together film, but it's also organized in a very appropriate style. It has a structure, and you can appreciate the structure. So I wouldn't be surprised if The Favorite won, but I think this is a category where Vice is going to pull through. Like, if it's gonna win something, well, actually there is something else that I think it'll win, but we'll get to that later. But right now, I think Vice takes the editing award. Best makeup and hairstyling. I think this is a clear case of Vice winning, because, well, you know, they really made Christian Bale look like Dick Cheney. It wasn't just that Christian Bale put on a lot of weight for the role. And there's a lot of really, like, makeup and hairstyling, much like film editing, it's not necessarily best makeup and hairstyling. It tends to be most makeup and hairstyling, like the most obvious changes, the most... You know, it's like why Suicide Squad won. They did a lot of really sort of ostentatious things with the makeup. You know, a lot of showy, you know, dramatic things with the makeup. And so it looks like the visual style is very striking. And so that's why I think Vice will end up winning. Best production design. This is another one where I'm expecting Black Panther to upset The Favorite, because I keep thinking about how the Academy might think, and I feel like they might feel, I don't know, that they want to throw populist film a bone. And okay, if I'm not predicting it to win Best Picture, but I think it'll make a strong showing, then I have to predict it in other places instead, and this would be one of those places. But again, it like hurts to imagine The Favorite going home empty-handed, so I'm not sure. You know what? No, I'm changing it. I gotta go with The Favorite for production design. Sorry, Black Panther, but I'm sticking with The Favorite. Yes, I'm betting against my own ballot on Gold Derby. Best score. I'm going with personal preference, but also the one that I actually think could win is If Beale Street Could Talk. That had amazing, gorgeous music, and I think the music is part of what made the film so emotionally evocative. And so I think it doesn't have to be a case of the most music, you know, the most intrusive score winning. I think it's a combination of really original type compositions, but also being really memorable as well. I mean, leaving the theater, the score was one of the most memorable things that came out as I was leaving the movie. Now, again, this could be another place where they reward Black Panther, maybe, but it was kind of like a run-of-the-mill Marvel score, so it didn't really stand out to me. So yeah, for this, I'm picking If Beale Street Could Talk. For Best Original Song, I think it's clearly Shallow from A Star Is Born. It always has been, and if it loses, it would be one of the biggest shocks in Oscar history if this song lost. But if it loses to anything, I would have to guess that it would lose to the I'll Fight from RBG, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg documentary that was written by the most nominated living songwriter without an Oscar win, by the name of Diane Warren, who wrote the song for Jennifer Hudson to sing for the documentary. But then I don't think the song is strong enough, or the narrative behind Diane Warren strong enough to overcome Shallow. Of course, if All Fight wins. It would be kind of weird in the sense that Lady Gaga's first Oscar nomination was from a songwriting collaboration with Diane Warren. I love All the Stars from Black Panther. That could be a plausible place for them to reward Black Panther, but my thing is that I think Shallow is it's that perfect combination of being a really big hit, but also a really good song and really important to the movie it's from. So with all that put together, I just don't see how Shallow loses. All right, getting to the home stretch. Sound editing, I'm going at left field and saying Bohemian Rhapsody. I don't really know why, it's just kind of a hunch. But these are the categories I tend to get wrong anyway, so I might as well just go with a hunch. For sound mixing, I'm going with First Man, because it's the type of movie that, I don't know, a lot of craft went into developing the sound of that movie. Of course, by the same token, Roma, if you saw it in theaters, I think one of the first things that you would recognize about it is the craft of its sound. So it's really hard, but I'm going to go with First Man. I'm just sticking with that. Best visual effects, I'm going to go with Avengers Infinity War. It's a big hit. The effects were great. And, you know, I could see First Man possibly pulling off the upset. But I don't know. I'm just going to stick with the blockbuster for now. For Best Animated Feature, I'm going with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Just please let this happen, Academy, please. It's so good. Best Documentary Feature, Free Solo is the frontrunner, but I think in this modern era, the RBG movie will end up winning, you know, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg is very much a current topic, very mainstream and influential. So RBG for me. Let's do it. Best foreign language film. I can't think of a time where a foreign language film was nominated for Best Picture and Best Foreign Language Film and didn't win Best Foreign Language Film. So I'm going with Roma, even though Cold War is definitely in the mix. Best Animated Short, I'm going with Bao because, you know, Pixar, it's really hard to ever bet against them in a category like this. Best Documentary Short, I'm picking Period, End of Sentence, solely based on subject matter. These are the categories that I pick based on subject matter that sound like the type of movie the Academy would go for. Live action short, the frontrunner is Marguerite, but I think Detainment could win, so I'm gonna go with Detainment. But hey, I imagine it'll be close. So if you made it all the way to the end, I'm gonna do my speed round now. For Best Picture, Roma. Best Director, Alfonso Cuarón, Roma. Best Actress, Glenn Close, The Wife. Best Actor, Rami Malek, Bohemian Rhapsody. Why did I forget the name of the movie? Best Supporting Actress, Regina King, If Beale Street Could Talk. Best Supporting Actor, Mahershala Ali, Green Book. Best Adapted Screenplay, Black Klansman. Best Original Screenplay, Green Book. Best Cinematography, Roma. Best Costume Design, Black Panther. Best Film Editing, Vice. Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Vice. Best Production Design, Black Panther. Wait, no, I switched that one. Sorry. Best Production Design, The Favorite. Best Score, If Beale Street Could Talk. Best Song, Shallow, A Star Is Born. Best Sound Editing, Bohemian Rhapsody. Best Sound Mixing, First Man. Best Visual Effects, Avengers Infinity War. Best Animated Feature, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Best Documentary Feature, RBG. Best Foreign Language Film, Roma. Best Animated Short, Bao. Best Documentary Short, Period, End of Sentence. And Best Live Action Short, Detainment. Well, I hope you've enjoyed spending this Academy Awards season with me. Whether I see you or I don't, have a happy Oscar Sunday. And best of luck on your Oscar ballot. Lord knows I'm going to be wrong about a lot of these, but I think you